I'll have to go quickly. I'll have
Hello,
to go
this is
do my
Jeff
hair.
Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today has been here before with a few of his projects, but today he's here to talk about a stunning new solo record he has coming out on August 11th called The Dreamer, Joseph Part 1. It's a retelling of a classic story that inspired, among other things, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. He's one of the most important and nicest artists in the history of progressive music, and it's always an honor to have him here. Please welcome Neal Morse. Welcome, Neal.
Hello. How are you
How are
doing,
you
man?
today?
Good. Great.
Good. So,
Yeah.
now your career, you've had just so many avenues, but your progressive solo material is usually based around biblical stories. And this record, much like the last two, Solo Gratia and Jesus Christ the Exorcist, you have a ton of guests voicing different characters and really bringing a theatricality to telling this story. What attracts you to writing this type of big musical production with characters rather than just, putting the music out there?
Well, the funny thing is, I remember years ago, a guy named Greg Walker, who was the guy who helped us put out our very first Fox Beard album. I remember right around maybe our third or fourth record, he's like, "When are you going to do your concept album?" And I remember saying, like, "Oh man, that's so trite. I don't want to do a concept album." You know, a prog band doing a concept album, it's just so
Yeah.
predictable, I guess. Um, anyway, the funny thing was then Snow just wanted to be a concept album.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can want something to be something that it wants to be something else. Um, I think it's well documented the arguing in the Neal Morse band between me and Mike about Similitude of a Dream, whether it was going to be a double or not. He just felt like it needed to be a single, and I felt like it wanted to be a double, and the music called it forth. I don't want to have it be about like, oh, who was right, really. You know, Mike was very gracious about it, um, ultimately, but the music has to go where it wants to go,
Yeah.
and so I would just say on all these albums, uh, I've done. I don't even know how many concept albums now. I've lost count.
A few,
I mean, it's
quite a few.
insane.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of concept albums. Well, and it turned out that they were the ones that touched people the deepest.
Mhm.
And the thing that's great about it, as a writer, and particularly a Christian person that's
Mhm.
writing music, um, rather than just writing worship music, which I love to do,
Yeah.
uh, the thing that's really interesting as a writer about diving into these stories is that you can write themes for the bad guy
Mhm.
and the struggle, and I can dig into what it was like for me. How did I feel when I felt separated from God? What was that like, and how can I write that? And then, and to me, that makes the happy ending
Mhm.
even more moving than, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Than just
Mhm.
like, oh, God's so good and we love you so much, which is all, of course, true.
Mhm.
But I enjoy the story, giving my testimony
Yeah.
from my testimony albums, which we're doing at Morse Fest
Mhm.
like next week. There's something about a story. And if you think about it, Jesus taught in stories. A parable is a story. So we ought to as well.
Yeah.
That's what a concept album is, really. You're telling a story in a whole album. It's like a musical,
Mhm.
only a little different,
Mhm.
but as a similar flavor.
Yeah. And now most people know the story of Joseph, through the iconic musical. But what drew you to this particular story and wanting to retell it?
Well, I have a confession to make. I've never heard the Technicolor Dreamcoat. I never heard Weapons.
Really?
I, yeah, I lived on Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, I
Yeah,
know every
yeah.
nuance of that, and it influenced some influence from Jesus Christ Superstar on uh, certainly
Mhm.
on Joseph Part One and Part Two. Um, what draws me to the Joseph story again and again is um, there's so much in it. It's such a great example of my favorite thing is the concept that if you do good, even when wrong is done to you, if you will serve and help even those that are hurting you, he Joseph goes into the prison where he shouldn't be and decides he's just going to help them. So he does so much help for them that they wind up turning it all over to him. Says that it's like everywhere he goes, they put him in charge because he's just awesome, and, and he serves with a good heart, even though he would have every reason just to tell them to take a hike. And I just love that as a way of thinking about living. Like, are you willing to serve when things aren't going your way? When you're not being treated well? Are you willing to serve the people who are treating you badly? I just think that's really compelling. And also the way that if you'll do that, God will, if you'll work on other people's problems, God will work on your problem. Like Joseph's problem is that his family's destroyed. His brothers have betrayed him. He can't forgive them. You know, it's their relationship is dead, really. And that so while Joseph is doing good to his oppressors, God is orchestrating this whole thing with his family in a land that he knows not of. It's I just love the idea that if we'll do good to others, God will work on our issues and
Yeah.
do good to us.
Yeah, and it's funny to hear you say that you've never heard the musical or seen it, because as I'm listening to the record, which I've done about 100 times in the past week or so, I'm in my mind, I'm wondering, wow, what's the challenge of taking something that's such a part of pop culture, but bringing it back to its origin and stripping it of all that? But you didn't really have to do that because you weren't familiar with sort of the pop culture version of the story.
No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I need to listen to it.
yeah,
I apologize to everyone who's a big fan of that. I haven't. Yeah, no, I just started just randomly, like most of the things that I've written like that. Usually it starts somewhere, and I started thinking about him. The beginning of the Joseph story to me really is him having those dreams
yeah.
when he's young. And so I started. The first thing I wrote, I think, was Million Miles Away,
Mhm.
about his dreams, and then that led into Burns Like a Wheel. Just like,
Mhm.
well, what is the brother's response? And then Liar, Liar, more of the brother's response, and then let's throw him in the pit.
Yeah.
You're just following the story really, which was um, that wasn't that difficult to write. I think it was a little bit later where I started to get a little bogged down.
Mhm.
Like uh, the whole restoration between him and his brothers, even when you read it, it gets a little bit gobbledygook.
Yeah.
I don't know how familiar you are with the story, but
Mhm.
and I left out some of that stuff
Yeah.
because it just gets so complicated. How I don't need to go into it, but just the whole thing with him getting reconciled with his brothers
Mhm.
gets kind of dicey, and it was kind of a funny thing to just put the big happy ending in there. But I figured I had to just cut it off and give a happy ending because it
Yeah.
actually goes on further,
Yeah.
you know. But I just felt like, okay,
Mhm.
it's over 2 hours. We gotta wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's fine.
So,
And this is part one. I assume, kind of because of length, you broke it up, and part one ends with Joseph in prison. When can we expect part two?
Well, I just signed off on it last night.
Mhm.
I just got the final mixes last night and signed off on the whole thing this morning, actually, with even the CD ID
Yeah.
points and the whole thing. And so they're going to release it, I believe, in February of next year.
Mhm. Great. Your writing always astounds me. I mean, there's a depth, not just lyrically, but also musically to all of your work. And as prolific as you are between your solo work and NMB, do you always have the next idea in your head working on it, or does just the music and the moment bring you to where you're going to go next?
No, I don't. If you look at my lyric book, a lot of times it's seasonal.
Mhm.
You know, I'll write little things in between here and there, but um, many times it's like, okay, now I'm working on this project. Boom, 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 boom.
Mhm.
And then there'll be a time when there aren't any lyrics because that's when I'm making the record.
Yeah.
And making the record, like tracking it and, all of the mountain of work that it is to actually, it's one thing to write stuff, it's a whole other thing to implement it and
Mhm.
make the record. And that's a whole, you know, many months of work
Yeah.
kind of thing, especially with a project like this. I
Mhm.
mean, the Joseph Part One and Two, man, it just about did me in. Like, whose idea was this? It's one thing to think of something,
Yeah.
just think of it. Oh yeah, there should be a choir part here, and oh yeah, horn
Mhm.
should come in, and I mean, it's another thing to, even if you're file sharing, you would still have to like write it all and feed everybody exactly what they're supposed to
Mhm.
do, and that's it's just it's a mountain, man.
Yeah.
But I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful. I'm not complaining.
Mm.
I'm very, very happy with how these albums have turned out.
Yeah. You know, Whenever an artist is public about their religious or spiritual beliefs, there's always, that segment of the just play music critic. You have such an amazing catalog of both secular and spiritual music. Do you ever feel a pushback from certain fans when you pivot from something like Innocence and Danger from the Neal Morse band into something like The Dreamer?
I don't know. I've been, for some reason, my wife's Facebook got hacked. Ever since then, I have no idea what anybody's saying about anything. I've been trying to get back in touch. Like, hello? Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know what people are thinking. I don't know what they're thinking, um, or how they're responding, really. But I haven't personally found that. There probably are people that feel that way. Um, I try to make my records not particularly preachy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think people understand that I'm just trying to do what I feel the Lord wants me to do, and the reason why I like to do things that are spiritually compelling, shall we say, is because I simply have found that that's the best stuff in life.
Mm.
I mean, I think the Holy Spirit, Spirit of God, however you want to put it, the gifts of the Spirit are love, peace, joy. It's just the best stuff there is. So anything I can do to help people to receive that or get in touch with that part of themselves, um, I think that's the greatest gift that you could give. It's actually, I mean, wow,
Mm.
don't hang me for this, but it's better than music.
I get it. I get it.
I
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like the giver of
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
It's like we worship the giver. The giver is greater than the gift,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the music's this wonderful gift, and of course, I don't think anybody would have to be convinced of how much I love
Yeah.
it. But yeah, just the Lord and what He can do in people's lives,
Mm.
what He's done. and what he's doing and what he's going to do
mm,
in my life, in my family's life. I want people to be as blessed as they can be.
mm. Well, it's funny because kind of building along where you're going with that, I think the thing that attracts me most to your style, especially in your solo work like this, is that you tell the story, but then you let me find myself in it. You let me find my interpretation of what you're telling. And I think that goes a lot further to understanding it than somebody pounding you over the head, telling you what you should think and believe. And
Yeah.
that, to me, that goes a long way with your writing.
Yeah. Well, each album is a little bit different too.
Mm,
Um, but I try to leave it open. I mean,
mm,
who wants a closed story?
mhm.
A story should be like, where do you find yourself
Yeah.
in it? I did at the end of Joseph Part Two, I rewrote it right towards the end. I resang it, and I wrote it it was a little bit like of an epilogue, the last song. And I don't want to spoil it because it won't come out till next year.
Mm,
But it's a little bit of a kind of like, so I've told this whole story.
mm,
So how about you? Where are you at?
mm.
You know, can you find yourself in this? And I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you think of that when it
Can't
hits.
wait. Can't. Now, August is a busy month for you. Not only is The Dreamer coming out, but as you mentioned, Morse Fest. And I believe it's the first ever Morse Fest Europe also coming up right after that. What can
Yes.
fans expect during those two performances?
Well, I mean, they know they can expect testimony and testimony too,
Yeah.
uh, with strings and horns and bells and whistles
Mm,
and background singers and a really good performance of it. I think what people probably don't know about Morsefest is that it's turned into its own thing.
mm,
It's it's more than it's more than a music festival.
yeah.
It's like a music festival combined with a kind of homecoming or
Mm,
something. It's turned into like this community thing.
mm,
A lot of people have become really good friends, and everybody's getting together again. It's a little bit of a spiritual retreat. It's a little bit of a um, I don't know. We have these VIP sessions where we play games and there's
mm.
Q&A. There's a whole different kind of feeling, a different kind of level of sharing, I guess you might say. And so I hope people can, you know, uh, if they feel to, hope they can find a way to be there. We're going to be live streaming
Yes,
the
I was just going to
USA
mention
show.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm,
So you can get the live stream for both nights. And so you can watch all the Morsefest stuff
mm.
without ever leaving your couch.
Well, we've been spending some time here with the amazing Neal Morse. The Dreamer Joseph Part One is out everywhere on August 11th. Any chance of seeing you on the road anytime soon? I know NMB did the big tour last year. You have any plans to hit the road at all?
I don't. The only shows that I have are Morsefest and
Mm,
Morsefest Europe, and that's all that's booked right now. Oh no, and that's not true. Cruise to the Edge with
yeah.
Flying Colors
Mhm.
next March. So yeah, that's going to be amazing. Cruise to the Edge with
Yeah.
Flying Colors next March. I don't
Mm.
think there's any cabins left, are there?
I
You know?
usually that sells out pretty quick, so I doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, there might
Yeah.
be. I think there might be.
Mm,
So if anybody's interested, check
yeah,
into that. That's
definitely.
going to be amazing.
Well, Neal, thank you so much. Again, The Dreamer, Joseph Part One, out everywhere August 11th. It's a great record. It's like you know how the story ends, but you still can't wait for Part Two. So we definitely look forward to that. And just thank you so much
Yeah.
for taking the time to do this.
Well, thank you for taking the time to
Mm,
talk to me about it. I appreciate it.
thanks. Bye.
All right, Jeff. Take care, man.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.